So today we begin the process of getting ready to graph lines. So people start to tell me when they're looking at the algebra class, that's when it went wrong, when I had to start graphing lines on graph paper. What's going to happen is we're going to have graph paper, and it's going to have an axis that goes up and down and an axis that goes across. And this one that goes across is the x-axis. And that's the number line we're used to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, and negative 5. And then we have one that goes up and down, which is actually for many people easier to use because if it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those will be our positive numbers. And that's like taking an elevator up in a building. But then you can also take an elevator down, usually for parking in a building, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. And the numbers get larger in size, their absolute value is greater as you get further from zero, further from the point right there on the ground level. We would call it 0 for the ground level. First floor will be up above it. Right, you have ground floor, then first, second, third, fourth, and so forth, like that. And down this way. So what we have, I want to make this a little bit more clear. I'm going to push this one up here and this negative one up here. All right. What we have is numbers going across as our regular number line that's flat, and now we introduce numbers going up and down, which would be our vertical number line. This is called the x-axis, and that's where you find your location of x by locating yourself on the proper coordinate, the right number position going across. And then this would be your y-axis, which goes up and down. This is your positive x-axis. This is to the right of 00, and to the left of 00 will be the negative portion of the x-axis. The negative on the y-axis is down, the positive is up, and they're both number lines. And what we're going to see is that we're going to have points which are going to have parentheses around the outside and a comma in the middle, separating two things called coordinates, because you got to have an x and a y, even if one or both are 0, to know where you belong on this graph paper. You need to know how far, if any, to go across and in what direction. And what about up and down? How far, what direction, if you move at all? And that's going to be x in front of y. I'm going to put a little 1 after each one. It won't always be 1, but that's my first point would be x sub 1, y sub 1. And this is called an index that's down here, and that tells you that I don't want the letter x anymore, and I don't want the letter y anymore. I want a number to be here, filling the job of telling me what value I have. So x comes before y, which is alphabetical. Z isn't used yet. Foreshadowing, if it were to come out of space toward you or away from you into the wall, that would be the z-axis. We're not doing that in this course, but x and y. So this is called the xy plane. It's called the coordinate plane because we have two things that go together like co. An ordinate deals with the number that's going to help you locate your position. So the coordinates, you need to have those both together. This is called the xy coordinate plane. And what we're going to look at here is, let's look at some descriptions of x. There are three things to know about x, two of which are important. Number one is that x is first in the ordered pair. Number two is that it goes across. And in so doing, if it's going to the right, it's going to be positive. If it goes to the left, it's going to be negative, posing some problems for anyone who is dyslexic. Okay, right and left can be a big problem for them. And I understand that. The third thing I've always mentioned for years is that it's called, the x coordinate used to be called the abscissa. All right, cool. X gets its own fancy name. Now y has things that are different in each case. Instead of being first, the y will be the second of the coordinates. It goes up and down, right? We might call that vertical. This could be called horizontal besides being called across. This could be called vertical besides being up and down. But up is positive and down would be negative. And that seems a little more natural because if you drop something, it always falls down due to gravity. So we know down from up. And if I tell somebody to meet me on the third floor of a building, they tend to go up the floor through the stairs or elevator. Whereas with left and right on x, you really have to make a clear distinction of which direction you want them to go. And then, this is why I still leave it in there. The name for this one, x was called the abscissa, was the ordinate. How unfair is that? They're both called coordinates, so let's say coordinate is their last name, then the x would be called abscissa ordinate, and this one would be called ordinate coordinate. Right, abscissa coordinate and ordinate coordinate. It's like Arthur MacArthur, Donald McDonald. It's a little silly. It just never seemed fair to me that one got to be called ordinate. It seems like they're expressing favoritism among their children. We don't really need to know this, but I always enjoy pointing that out. X's are first and go across, and Y's are second and go vertically, or up and down. Across needs more description. See, if you say up or down, you're going to say one of those two, and you're going to mean that one. But if you tell someone to go across, somebody might think to go left, somebody might think to go right. It could be based on something as simple as whether they're left or right-handed. So when we're talking about numbers going across, I'm going to use the word right or the word left. When I'm doing up and down, I will say up or down, but that seems more natural for a lot of people. And these x and y axes is what we would call more than one axis, meet at the point called, with coordinates 00, the origin, the starting point. All points that you want to plot are going to start at 00, the origin. Now, what we have is if you're going from the origin to the right, you're going positive, and then going up, you're going positive. So I'm going to put them in order. The x is positive, the y is positive. If you go this way, if you go to the left, that's negative for your x, and then up, that's positive for your y. If you were to go to the left and then down, that would be negative across and negative for going down. And now if you were to go positively to the right, that would be plus for your x, but then go down, that would be negative. And you see each one of the, what we call, you can't call them combinations truly in math, permutations, which means that it even counts what's first and second. You got plus followed by plus, minus followed by plus, minus followed by minus, and plus followed by minus. All four of the possibilities are there. And this is our first and favorite quadrant where everything is positive, no negatives in sight, no worries. We would start on the positive x-axis and then go through our favorite and first quadrant. There are four of them, because this is cut into four pieces or four sections of the coordinate plane. And the first one is quadrant number 1. And I write it number 1 not because I'm a geek in Roman numerals, but there are numbers doing all kinds of other things when we use our regular numbers. So we use Roman numerals all the time. That is standard writing for this. This one now, if we go the path that's taken from here to there, we're just going to follow that path. And here's number 2, and then is number 3, and then is number 4. The most popular quadrant among people learning this is quadrant 1 because there are no negatives. The second most popular one tends to be number 3 because they're both negative, so you can't kind of mess up which is where. Not a lot of fans for 2 and 4, but these are where the quadrants are. Now what I want to do is show you how to plot any point. And it's going to be written out step by step, so it's going to seem a little slow and silly, but it makes sure that you can build the process of plotting points from knowing nothing. Number 1, start every time at 00, the origin. Don't make a point there yet. Okay, number 2, move across, counting steps. You don't count your first pop down there on the origin as step 1. You're starting at 0, and the first move is your step. If it's positive, it'll be 1, 2, 3. If it's negative, it'll be 1, 2, 3 in the direction that goes that way. Counting steps for your x coordinate. Number 3 is a very important thing, no dot yet. Number 4, move vertically, counting steps. For your y coordinate, which is the second one you come. So you go across first and then up and down second. And that's when you plot your point. It doesn't seem like a 5-step process, but it actually is. It seems like to many people a 2-step process, but getting to the origin is 1, moving for the x's is 2. Not plotting a point is just as important, because some people be like, I'm there, let me make the dot. So it's important, you know, not to act on making the dot, then making your move vertically, and finally making the point. We're going to plot these, and then we'll go back and see where they land as far as quadrants go. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put a capital letter in front of what's called an ordered pair. That's going to be x before y with a comma in between them. Parentheses around them, defining it as an ordered pair, commas to separate the coordinates. And the first one I'm going to call is A, and I want that one to be 2, 3. So I start at the origin, so I get to 0, and that's my first move is to get there to start. Now I move across, because 2 is positive in x, it's across positively 2, which will go to the right. In this room, I would say it's toward the door, but you know, in the classroom it's even easier. But you got to make sure you're going in the positive direction on the number line too, and you don't make a dot yet. You might be resting your pencil very lightly there. It's not dot time yet. And then positive 3 will be up. 1, 2, 3. Make your dot there and label that with capital A. That's 2, 3. Next I'll go to red, and I'll say let's create B. Point capital B will be 4, negative 2. 4 followed by negative 2, order counts. So 4 to the right is positive as I go across 1, 2, 3, 4, and then downward 2 because it is a negative vertical move. And you don't get to choose which you do first. You must move across first with the X that you read from left to right, and then the second one comes after the comma, and that would be a vertical move. Let's go for green. C is a point I want to call negative 2, 0. Now I've already had a negative 2 occur, and this has a 0. But the negative 2 I had before was a y value, and this time negative 2 is an x value. So I start at the origin, and I go to the left 2, and it's time to think about moving for my y's, and I don't because it's 0. But I looked and saw the 0. I didn't say, let me just move left 2 and call it a day. I moved to the left 2, and then because the 0 move vertically is called for, then I can plot my C. I want to go with negative 3, negative 4. It's not wrong, but I want to have a different color for each one, so you'll be seeing orange here. Negative 3, negative 4. I start at the origin, and I go to the left 3. 1, 2, 3 steps. 1 for the first step, 2 for the second, which puts me on C, my third. And at that instant, I'm at negative 3, 0, but I'm not done. I have to go down 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there I can plot point D. The purple is not wrong either, but I want to put my point E here. Now I've represented one quadrant, a second quadrant, a third quadrant. 3 of the quadrants are represented here, and I want to get another quadrant so I get to all 4. So I want to wind up over here somehow. And in this case, I want to go to negative 3 and positive 5. So I'll start at the origin 0, 0, go 1, 2, 3 to the left, which has me where I was for D before I made my vertical move, and then this goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and will put me there. And will put me, sorry, that I already had D, that is meaning to be E. Now let's find the quadrants for each one of these. A is in a quadrant. You can see the number there, but also we should get in the habit of saying, and yes, it's true, counterclockwise. It's not clockwise to be mean. It's clockwise because of what I showed earlier. Start on the x-axis and go through your favorite quadrant. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it goes like this. A is here, that's quadrant 1. B is here, that's quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. C is here, it's not in the quadrant, okay? It is on the axis. It lies between quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. It's on the negative side of the x-axis. It's called the negative x-axis. But it's not called quadrant like, oh, let me average 2 and 3 and get 2.5. No, we can't do that. It is on the negative x-axis. So it's not actually lying in a quadrant. It's lying on the border of 2 quadrants. D is in quadrant 1, 2, 3 for D. And quadrant for E is quadrant starting with 1, that's 2. And those are quadrants where they're going to be. So as we plot points, that's where they go. If you need to plot a point that lies between 2 coordinates, then you need to put it between those 2 coordinates. If you get 4 1/4, but it's positive, you want to be between 4 and 5. Okay, if you have negative 3 2/5, you want to get to negative 3 and on your way to negative 4. Whether it's up or down will depend on positive or negative. or if it's left or right would depend on positive or negative, but is it vertical or horizontal depends on whether it's first or second. The ones that land between integer coordinates are much harder to graph because, geez, 2/5 can look a lot like 1/3. To me, I can always tell the difference if I get in close enough between a 6 and a 7. But I might have a tough time telling the difference between 2/7 and 3/8. So that can be rather tough. So the responsibility that I lay on you is to really nail the ones that are integers and do the best you can with ones that involve mixed numbers. And with mixed numbers, you need to be between the right two integers to at least get close enough to what will give me an approximate view of what they look like. And this is how we'll be able to put numbers take numbers as coordinates and use them to locate positions on the graph. If we were doing a map, this would be fine, but if we started having things where people were above the ground, like airplanes, now we need an extra dimension, the dimension of how far it is off the ground, for example. And we don't have that right here, but we have x going across as our initial value going in, doing some work and coming out with a y value that we put vertically. And we plot the 2 points at the same time. When the two of them have come together, they give us a spot to place it. That's how GPS works. Okay, good luck with it.